Secretary, Gara Gilzer. Councilman Gilzer is not here tonight, so just let that be noted. We'll start with the first agenda item. The council will receive an update on Arts and Culture Commission. Diane Kripe, Public Arts Specialist.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. It's a pleasure addressing you this evening. First, I would also like to recognize we have several members of our Arts and Culture Commission here. Would you like to stand and be recognized, please? Thank you. I would love to introduce them. Alex Coley, Chair.
Stand up again. Yeah, good.
Jessica Rosenberg, Martin Weslowski, and Ed Bonvecchio.
Oh, great.
Thank you.
And before you start, I want to say thank you to this group, okay? Because it seems like we always get that in the tail end, and I thought, let's start it out with that, okay? So I know the entire council feels that way.
We have several new members this year, and I think it's a really wonderful, energized group, and they're already off and running, doing projects. It's been exciting this year. We've had several new exhibitions, public art projects, programs, and I'd like to turn this over now to Alex Coley, who put this presentation together, and we are really indebted to him for doing that.
Welcome, Alex.
Mayor Lord, Council, thanks for having us. When we get there, am I just going to hit that button?
Yes.
All right. That was the important bit. First, wanted to start with just this one slide from the last survey that we had done in 2012 that Paul Alardo put together, basically indicating that public art still seems to be important. I thought it was interesting that the only demographic difference is based on how long you've lived here. If you've lived here longer than 5 years, the likelihood that you're going to value public art in Goodyear goes up. I don't know why. I'd love to know.
That's interesting. Perhaps it's because they come from other areas where art's very important to the city.
And you've seen it and you're used to it.
We have a lot of people from Minnesota, and if anybody's been to the Twin Cities, you will see art in all of the surrounding cities and in the city itself. It's extraordinary. So, you know, I would assume that's possibly why we're hearing that.
And I also think that over the last 5 years, we have put in a lot of pieces, you know, that were not here before that. So, I mean, it's like, you know, kind of modeling for how this should, you know, could progress. And, you know, I think people can extrapolate into the rest of the city just seeing these enhancements and creating a personality that, okay, that's got to be Goodyear. Can't be anything else because nobody else got as is. Nobody else got, you know.
Of course, you know, I said that state, so you know the other people from the other states are going to email us. So as they do, bring them in so we can repeat that.
I'm going to email you.
Okay. The public art update. The Park and Ride. This is located at Cornerstone Boulevard, which is like kind of right behind Mimi's. The columns have a cotton scroll pattern. It's backlit at night. Because it was integrated with the design of the facility, when it was first going up, the overall cost to the art enhancement was much less than it would have been adding the enhancement after the fact. Plus, we were able to partner with the federal government on the funding, which is always lovely as well.
Are these columns on every one of the covered post area, or is it just a few of them, or?
Just the center.
I can't remember.
Just the center.
Just the center one?
The centerpiece, and you can see that, you know.
Yeah. I've seen it, and it's beautiful, but I never walked to the other ones, you know, where the other cars are parked underneath. And
Yeah,
they're
I
just
believe
plain
it's
cold.
just down the center.
Oh, it's just down the center, okay.
The actual bus stop.
Yes,
Yeah, it's beautiful.
as opposed to the covered parking areas.
I always stop here, though, and I think you need to explain to the public, because we always get this comment. Why are we putting artwork for government projects?
Just throw that in there.
I don't know. Do you want to answer that, or do I need to have Diane? Diane, this is for the record, because this always comes up after we have these presentations.
Certainly.
You might as well just stay there, Diane.
I'll stay here. Yeah, we had the opportunity to partner with some federal grant funds. Originally, there were 5 columns that were going to be just I-beams, and so we had the opportunity to put artwork around the I-beams that would basically reflect the history of Goodyear cotton.
It would have been very difficult with a private partnership unless, of course, the private partnership
Right. Yes, it
provided
would have
the,
been.
okay, great.
And also to your broader question, I mean, there are numerous studies that show where there are public spaces with art enhancements, there's a lower likelihood of, getting tagged, vandalism, even litter. That starts to, as soon as you start to see those enhancements, you're kind of setting a tone for that space as a public shared space that's, special, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The community park project, Mary Schindel,
Chanel?
pronunciation. The art enhancements that have gone up, and we were just there for opening day with my son's Little League, and thrilled with how all that's coming together. The art enhancements invoke Egyptian art with a nod to our cotton history, as well as depicting the various activities of the park and local flora and fauna. So you've got dogs for the dog park, and roadrunners and bats, and all manner of fun local things. This was another very recent piece, and everyone loves it.
Yes.
Because this is, and this is the front, the Western Avenue facing side. It's right at the southwest corner of the park. The dedication, there were 38 people that came for that. Thank you, Mayor, and also Councilmember Cip and Gelser were there. Thank you. And
Councilman Stiff made a great presentation, thank you.
yeah, and that was on March 31st. It was created by Phoenix artists Nina Solomon and Heidi Dauphin. Celebrates the history of Goodyear's oldest neighborhood. On the backside, this is just a detail, but there were a whole bunch of historical photos and explanatory plates. The photo tiles show the history of the neighborhood's development from its start with cotton through its role in World War II defense industry and how the neighborhood grew along with it. And I believe the benches, there are some art benches that have been fabricated at this point, or?
Right, they're in fabrication. We have 2 more art benches that will be going in Palmetier Park. They're by the same artists who created the benches that are on Western Ave right now, so there's some uniformity there.
They're not there yet, though.
No, they're under fabrication right now.
Okay.
Do these benches get hot in the summer?
They do. What we try to do is we've asked for other types of materials that would be less hot. What is recommended is that they be placed near a shaded area because there are just some materials that don't hold up very well, and we want to make sure that these benches would hold up over many, many years.
They look like they're metal.
The seat is actually stone or granite,
Okay,
but the rest of it is metal.
okay.
There's a couple really nice trees in
It
that
looks
park.
beautiful, yeah.
Big
They
old
could be-
trees.
yeah.
It'd
They
be
could be
nice
around
under
a lot.
the trees so they could sit in the summer, yeah.
Mayor's Wall of Fame. This was an exciting project. Call to artists went out to local high schools for artwork to be displayed in the mayor's office and around City Hall. Pictured here, these are all 4 of the students that were selected were from Millennium High School: Tara Dickinson, Carolyn Wood, James Seymour, and Anna Piergolini. Sorry if I butchered that one, but the pieces are, where'd they go?
No, I didn't.
They're in there somewhere because it shows it a little bit.
There's some.
further back.
We'll find it.
Yeah.
Well, let's see if I can. There we go. And we were just stunned by the level of craft and, just their eye at such a young age. I mean, I wasn't doing stuff that cool at that age. I'll just say. Loma Linda. Where'd that go? My deck is shuffled. There we go. Planning is underway for renovation of Loma Linda Park. Once funding is secured, the park will have several improvements. Public art will be incorporated in that restoration from the beginning, in these first stages. Currently, we're looking at commissioning an artist to create art enhancements for a promenade that will bisect the park from east to west.
Have those plans been done on the park? Has the master plan been done?
There's a master plan, but at this point, what they're working on is 15% design phase. So we're working on getting an artist on board as soon as possible.
Yeah, because it's sure easier to get the artist input before the final design is done, so that you'll know where to place the art, I would suspect.
And much less expensive as well, because, you can integrate the materials in the process all the way down the line. And the Art and Civic Spaces program is still doing gangbusters. Enhances this city building for both the public and the employees. Offers West Valley artists a venue to display their work in Goodyear. Fosters expression of the arts in the West Valley, and it's a great excuse to come see City Hall if you don't have other cause. The lecture series. First, I want to say special thanks to Ground Control for helping us get it off the ground. No pun intended. But then we outgrew the space. I mean, we were shoulder to shoulder, for the first year. And we've had a change of venue to Total Wine, Palm Valley Pavilions West. These are art and culture talks that are free to the public, and so is the coffee, thanks to Starbucks. Program's funded by a grant from the Arizona Humanities Council and organized by the City of Goodyear Parks and Rec Department, Arts and Culture Division. And my favorite part is always at the end when everyone just swamps the speaker because they didn't want to raise their hand in front of everybody, but they still had all kinds of questions. Attendance is great. Like I said, we had to move to a larger venue. And we have anywhere from 43 to 77 people, and it's a great partnership with
Bill, you had a
local
comment?
business.
You've got one coming up in a couple of weeks.
We do.
Are you going to plug that?
Spoiler alert, yes. The description of the talk, this is definitely on the culture side of arts and culture, but this is going to be a super fun one.
And where will this one be?
This is April 18th at 7 p.m.
Yes.
and at the Total
Wine.
Wine.
Yep,
That's such a great facility. Yeah.
been great.
And the description of the talk is How Wild Was It? An overview of crime and justice in the Arizona Territory. Author Paul Heider will provide a fascinating glimpse into the Arizona Territory justice system. So I'm there. That's going to be a good one. Advocacy. Again, we participated in GAIN. That seems to be a good event. A lot of people come by, and we have kind of a summary map showing the pieces, the public art pieces that have already gone up or pieces that are going to be coming up, and especially opportunities for the public to just come and participate in the process. We can engage in the community and seek input from the public, advocate for the arts and art education, and every year our involvement is increased because, I apologize, you don't need to know when I get an email. And so another event that we went to was the Centennial Festival, which again was fun. That was a big turnout. We got a lot of people who joined our mailing list, which is just an opportunity to either get bulletins about when upcoming events are coming or when there's call to artists or other opportunities to volunteer and get involved with the arts in Goodyear. Art education. We worked with Miss Marmer and Miss Flagg's 6th grade classes to produce 2 animated shorts, which were screened before their screening of Toy Story 3 at West Star Elementary. They had a movie night, and They wrote the scripts, they drew all the characters, drew all of the backgrounds, recorded the voiceovers, and
It was fabulous. Now,
and
how
thank
many
you for
hours?
coming out to that.
Listen,
How many hours?
how many hours did you spend with these children? I mean, this is extraordinary.
Actually, the hours with the children, I would say maybe 2 or 3, and then the other hours, which
You stopped counting. is
yeah,
that what you-
once the coffee hit a certain level, it was just not. But it was totally worth it. I'd love to do it again. It's just a great project, and seeing the kids. I took the picture at night, so you can't really see, but it's a whole bunch of kids with their families showing off what they did and seeing we screened it for them just before, but it didn't really dawn on them because they were seeing it on a little TV
Well,
in
I'm
the
sure
room.
when
Then
they
see
start
it that
walking, their
big.
characters start walking across the screen. I mean, it has
So yeah, it just that's fun. Also, Arts Interact. Phoenix artist Tessa Wint led students with disabilities in this art project, which she titled Zoom In. Invited participating students from the life skills class at the special education department at Desert Edge High School to discover the creative potential in the details of their immediate day-to-day environment. Basically looking at things in their surroundings and then taking a closer look, taking things from either the shapes or the textures or something and trying to just get that out. And so the project sessions included demonstrations, material experimentation, hands-on time, creative decision-making, and observation-based group discussion. And the resulting pieces were, until just recently, still on display in City Hall. And when they came, that was awesome. Just these kids seeing their stuff on display and everyone just oohing and awing over their work and being able to explain what it was that they had, what the subject matter was or what something about the experience, and that was very cool. Special thanks to APS, City of Goodyear, Desert Edge High School, and all those who've generously contributed their time, resources, and talent to this project. Future events. We now have a date for Ballet Under the Stars. That'll be at North Lake in Estrella, and that is September 22nd, and it is free to everybody. Child's Play also is coming May 4th, 7 p.m. And this is, I won't read you the whole blurb, but it's an original piece, and they're going to have a performance at the Performing Arts Center at
the
Foothills.
Yeah.
And grades 1 through 6, but obviously it could be fun for anybody. Funded by the Arizona Commission on the Arts.
And I think for the public who have never been up there to see that theater, they might be interested in seeing that facility.
It is a really neat space, and they very often have other visual arts by the students that on display there. And
Joe?
Multicultural Arts Festival.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, Joe had a question.
Just real quick, what are all the different medias that we advertise so the public knows of all these events? How do we get the word out overall?
Well, Child's Play is in the latest in Focus,
Okay.
which is wonderful. We have in Parks and Rec, we have an extensive email listserv of about 8,000, and we also have an arts listserv of a couple of hundred people who are just interested in arts in general. So we get the word out. And
And our website, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And it will also be issued in a press release,
Okay.
hopefully through Communications Office.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
And Multicultural Arts Festival, question mark? We were charged with coming up with a signature event, and we are on our way.
Good.
More to come.
We're glad to hear that.
So, and that's what we've got. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you so much. Sherry?
I just want to say that's really great. I just had a question, like the kids in their movie, now that we have a YouTube channel, is that something we could put on our YouTube channel so the kids could see themselves on internet, their animation? And
Gets into a lawyer-in question. I don't know. I said that they have that it's their property. I have nothing, you know, I have no ownership. I have no, it's, you know, because it was the kids' intellectual property. So I don't know, you know, to what extent we can. I haven't even put it on any of the sites that I'm with.
And then my other question was, perhaps, you know, a lot of the art we have in the public spaces, as people move here, they don't know what it stands for. If we could put that on our Facebook page or put that somewhere, like I get questions about the art at the dog park. You know, what is that? What does that mean? Or along those lines. And I think it'd be really great so new people know what it is and the Egyptian and the culture and all that for them too, because it's just really great.
Yeah, a virtual tour would be.
Yeah, that would be great, because I would love to have more people know about this, because a lot of people don't know about all the work you're doing.
Great.
It's a great idea.
Joe?
Just real quick, I know we had some discussions, and it was a while back when Norma, I guess, is Norma still
Yes.
on a group? Okay. And one of it was a multi-ethnical festival. And that was trying to get the whole community involved. I don't see them as much out here, but, you know, it would be food and culture and et cetera. Is that gone anywhere, do you know?
That was that last
That's-
question mark
Oh,
bullet
okay,
point,
so that
because
kind-
there's nothing to report except that we are
Still, okay.
and it's just such a behemoth to
I know,
you know,
I know.
and trying to figure out what the right scale, what the right
Okay.
you know.
And the
But-
Arts Commission has established a
Can you pull that
ad hoc.
microphone up just a little bit closer to you? Thank you.
The Arts Commission has established an ad hoc committee to explore how is the best way to get the word out and find out what artists are out there, what are the cultures that would be featured. So they're still very interested in pursuing it.
Well, as I recall, when Norma, it was just not art, it was food and,
Food
yeah, okay.
In
and
performing
Kinda
arts.
started-
Farming,
yeah.
yeah.
Sort of started with the Chinese New Year, and then we talked about we have the German culture and the Nederlanders, and we've got a number of
I
people. We have
just,
Hispanic. We have
Yeah, and what
really
we'd
have-
like is it's a sampling. It may, you know, not necessarily comprehensive. This would be awesome to be an annual event and, you know, just kind of help you triangulate. Look how many different kind of folk
right.
we are and celebrating all the awesomeness.
Joanne.
I just want to say congratulations, because I know that you haven't had a lot of funds to work with, and you know you're doing a great thing, and really showing the slides you just did, we're really starting to kind of make an impact. That there's a little bit here and there everywhere, and I think the tour of Goodyear art would be kind of a cool thing on our website or Facebook, whatever it is. So I'm going to put you on the spot. What's your favorite public art piece of all of the different ones?
And why?
And why?
I really like the Palmatier Park sign. It just feels good. It just feels right. It's, you know, the historic aspect of it. You know, on the front is an artistic, you know, expression, but on the back it's just lays it out. And this is my 9th state of residence. I've always lived someplace that had a story, you just kind of assimilate yourself in. And you know what I love about Goodyear is that it's still writing its story, and that's the point for all of us on the Arts and Culture Commission, is to just tease that story out. You know, not create the story, just find it. It's there, and that piece is one of the pieces that
It's pretty
you know
extraordinary.
just lets you see all of the. And I don't want to telegraph too much, but Ed Bonvecchio has been trying to get us to do a big old statue of the women that made the first Macy's balloons, the giant balloons. That was done right here in Goodyear. The Balloon Girls. So, but I mean there's so much
That's
history that we
meaningful.
have that we still haven't. You know, people move here from all over the place, and just, you know, if you start having stories laid out to be able to see, then we all kind of get a better sense of us.
Very good. Wally.
Yes, I wanted to just tell you, I served on a Park and Recreation Commission for 12 years, of which 5 of the years I was chair. And we did a multicultural event for Sacramento County that drew approximately 25,000 people. But it took us 6 years to put it together, because to do it right, you're doing the right thing. You have to identify the cultures out there. You have to identify your audience. You have to identify the funding. You have to identify what you're really trying to pull together. So I know y'all are working on it. I appreciate you not rushing it. so that when we do it right. And I'm sure it's going to be wonderful once we do it, now that we have a place to do it where we didn't before. So thank you very much. I'm really interested in our artwork. I know sometimes we tend to put art out, but we don't say what it is. We don't put plaques out. We don't describe necessarily who the artist was. I don't know if that is a thought that your commission has thought about, but I would like to lay that on your table. In the grand scheme of things, in 50 years, I'd like people to know who the artist was that did Palmatier Park and it was dedicated and that sort of thing. And that's how we can tell our story of Goodyear. The Centennial Committee has identified the Litchfield train station as our Centennial project. It's our dream someday to have that in a park and to be used as a museum that will tell the history of Goodyear. And that could be some place that we could put some of the balloon information if, in fact, we are able to successfully do this. So we're helping think of ideas with you. We want to thank you all, and especially the new members of the commission. Thank you so much for applying. Those of us on the committee thoroughly enjoyed interviewing all of you and hearing your exciting take on what you think our city should do, and we're expecting great things from you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Wally. And thank you very much. Are the questions all finished? We really appreciate it. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
You're quite welcome. Second item on the agenda, we'll receive information on the FY 12-13 draft capital improvement program. Brian Dahlke, Terry Canada, and Ken Kennedy. Oh. That's not Ken.
Yes, Mayor, Council will
Sorry,
actually.
that's not Ken.
David Ramirez. But staff will be going through a presentation on the capital improvement plan. We've gone through some of this previously. Now this is looking into the final draft plan, and we will have an opportunity to go through it tonight. Certainly a chance for questions along the way as well. So Terry Canada is going to kick it off.
Well, now that we talked about Ken, I'm just going to go ahead and introduce Ken. You want to stand up and just Ken actually is the CIP Program Administrator, and he does a lot of behind-the-scenes work. If he had his way, he'd be up here, but...
Well, thank you, Ken. All right, thank you very much.
So, with that, the brief agenda tonight, I probably have about, I think it's 15, 16 slides. It shouldn't take that long. I'm going to talk about the process. It actually starts in the fall each year, so I'll go over some of the steps that we took on as staff to get to the point where we had the recommended plan that you're going to see tonight. It'll talk about funding, be it brief, as funding has declined over the years. Changes to legislation. Most of that is to do with the Senate bill that was passed for the impact fees, and review of the plan, and then summary of the key projects. After that, David is up here, and he's going to take over and provide a couple updates on some projects of interest that are local. With that, I just want to, again, show you the calendar of the whole budget process. At some point, the CIP kind of melts into the budget process. It does follow the same legal requirements. We'll put the plan within the adopted budget at the tentative in May, the 21st, and then again it becomes part of the final budget adoption in June. Once again, on the process, this actually starts in the fall each year. We put together a committee of multi-departmental folks that come together and represent their projects, and then go through a series of meetings where we actually develop some scoring-based or some criteria-based scoring I'll go over in a minute. Look at the projects, look at some of the funding availability, the restrictions on the funding. Do we have the means to operate? Again, the committee comes up with a recommended plan that is fully funded over the 5 years, presents that to city management, and as you can see, we'll present that to council, and then again, it becomes part of the final budget. So some of the considerations going into this year's five-year plan, like I was saying, we did have a committee that came up with some prioritization. Some of those points that we used to prioritize the projects would include public council support. There was a category for conformance to city plans. Was it part of an operating plan? Was it part of a master plan? Did it promote economic development? A number of items had prior contractual obligations, and so they were scored and ranked accordingly. Did it provide a grant opportunity? Did we have funding from an outside source? And then some of the other points available were for public and public health and safety issues. Once we went through that, was determined that a number of projects within the streets and the transportation perhaps needed a little more dedicated time to kind of iron that out and pull together. There were just a number of requests for streets and not as much funding available, I should say. It was probably short on funding, and so we found that we had some unfunded projects, and so we went again through the subcommittee and several times talked about the transportation needs, what would be more important, how did that fit in with some of the neighboring projects that were going on, some of the IGAs. And so within that, you will see the recommendation from that subcommittee that went on for streets and transportation. The other thing we looked at for considerations.
You had, I'm sorry, Joanna's question.
Oh, no, not yet.
Oh, sorry.
Not yet. I'm getting there. Go ahead.
I thought you nodded at me.
Okay, and feel free as we're going through. The other thing we looked at is we moved forward in the 5 years were the operating costs of, or the impacts of the operating costs for any projects that had costs that were associated with them. I guess a good example of that would be is if we were going to do a park. At one point we had a pool that was in the plan. I believe it was up in Australia. And so we had to look at, is there available funding to operate these larger scale projects? And anyways, that was taken under consideration too. We also looked at the impact fees and some of the new restrictions that came along with those. And again, emphasis on master planning were the things in the master plan. I think what we decided is a number of the master plans were old, and based on this new legislation from the impact fees, that perhaps the master plans that were related to the impact fees needed to be updated. Some of the other key things that came out from the legislation with the impact fee, we brought before you and adopted the new fees. That was done through a consulting study, kind of like an updated study. Tischler Bice did that. We brought it back to you, and those fees went into effect January of 12. Essentially, we have a category of new fee and old fees for a number of the impact fees. The new fees had, I would just say, stricter rules on those, and so we actually segregate the funds. And moving forward, we'll have different criteria and different regulations on the new funds versus the old funds. And so that came into play this year for the first time ever in putting the plan together.
Joanne?
Just real quick, is that I noticed, and I don't know if this has already taken place or this is going forward, you had $200,000 for an impact fee study. Is that what you're talking about right now that has already occurred? Or
No,
going forward, what is
That
that?
will be a full study. That will,
Full
again,
study
of all the impact fees. It's a full study. What we did, we had a study that went into effect. I don't know when we started it. I want to say it went into effect in 2008. We just updated that study. So we took all the information and just redid and updated that based on current costs in the plan and projects that were in the, it's called the IPP.
Infrastructure Improvement Plan.
IIP. That's why I couldn't
yes.
get it. Okay, IIP, the Infrastructure Improvement Plan. So we took a look at that, made sure that those were the projects that were in the 5-year plan, and then updated the cost for those. Then we took the new criteria, overlaid that, and said, okay, the cost for the new fee was calculated, and then the projects that were cost related to the old fee stayed the same.
So we're having to do this because of what the legislature has put down on us is going to cost our city $200,000 to see the impact of our impact fees.
And,
Is that?
right, and I'm going to say the majority
Had
of
that
that.
discussion, very discussion with the legislator today, that it.
Can we
you
send
know,
them a bill? Is it
Well, it
And
will
the
be funded
consequences.
through the impact fees. That's the part.
It
So
will
it's
be
not
funded through the.
through the impact fees.
One less. Well, you're not.
So that's right, that's allowed, a study, isn't it, in that?
Correct. And it is mandated, I believe, that the study, that we have to have everything done by 2014, so that's why you'll see that in the budget for next year. And it usually takes a year, a little more than a year to complete the study.
Okay. Thank you. I have one more.
Go ahead.
Okay, and with all the, like I said, the planning efforts and the considerations, this is the fully adopted plan that's before you. You can see the first year of the plan is pretty small. The major thing is, again, the commitment that we have for, it's the 303 right-of-way payment. And then moving ahead to 2014, that's the MC 85 payment that's there out of the streets. The total plan for the 5 years is $33.8 million.
Joanne?
Okay, two questions. On the park section, you have 250,000, and yet in total you have 119,000. Excuse me. Is that because of money that's a carryover? That's one question. And then the MC85 payment, was that with the county? I thought that went away. Or was that renegotiated for a later time? Is that
No,
what
the
it was?
MC, it was deferred, and it'd be the
It's
final
deferred.
payment is in 13-14.
Remember we asked it because of
1.4
the,
million.
I thought I
Did
was
we ask
hoping
for-
they had let that
no,
go.
we had asked for a deferral from them.
All right. And the parks part?
No, in the parks, it's actually a master plan, and it should be, the total should be the 250.
Okay.
Can you just say that for the public, since you're saying this 119 needs to be
The
corrected?
total, the 250 should be brought over to the
Okay,
other
so
column.
as the public viewing this, that 119 should read 250,
And
okay?
it is a Parks Master Plan that's scheduled for the
I'm not sure which one,
2013
Molly,
year.
did you have, did you have?
Well, I have a question under the arts.
Oh.
So do we want to talk about that right now?
You are. Well, I don't know, what's your question on, is yours on, same thing?
No.
All right, Wally?
Okay, my question, Terry, on the arts, using this on your chart, it shows that there was no money expended in fiscal year 2013, but it will kick in 2014, 15, 16, and 17. Are these projected amounts that you're hoping we have construction tax come in, that money is there, or is this being budgeted, and do we have it? And if we do have it, can it be spent on something else besides the arts?
Just review,
Sorry.
I think, is it 1% of the CIP? Was that our agreement that we voted in at one time, City Manager?
Yes, Mayor, actually, it was up to 1% based on available funds.
Okay, so, because I don't think Wally was here when that came about. So go ahead, Wally, with your next
So
question.
it's up to 1%, but we could spend less.
Correct.
Okay, so where are you getting these figures from? That's what I'd like to know.
So the program is based on 1% of available funding. There are restrictions to the funding, so not all the projects that you see up in the grid will qualify to support the art program. And so based on the available funding, the moving forward, 13 through 17 is available funding for that program. And then we actually have, I'll go back a little bit to ask your first question. We have funding, we probably have funded that program the last at least 3 years. And we have carryover funding. I don't have the, do you have the dollar amount carried over? 104,000 approximately be carried forward. So they will have money to spend in 2013. It's just not new money. It'll be carryover money from this year that's unspent.
So 104, you're saying, is part of this figure right here of the 66?
Yeah,
Where are we?
right. It's actually unspent money from 2012 that will go forward and slide into the column for 2013. It's not new funding, though. This is just new funding. The $4 million in 2013 represents new money available for new projects.
Wait a minute, what, 4 million?
So she's saying that
In
no
total.
carryovers are in
Oh,
this.
excuse me.
Is that what you just said?
The carryover funding for the CIP is not included in this.
Okay.
It's being calculated now. I think we're anticipating a little more than $20 million that has not been spent, that'll be brought forward. It'll be included in the final budget, but it's not presented as new part of the 5-year CIP that you're going to be asked to adopt.
Okay.
All right, and could we spend the money on anything else if we don't spend it on the arts?
You may. It doesn't always work the opposite way. The project money it doesn't always qualify to be spent on arts, but the arts money can roll back into the projects.
But into the projects for a capital project, not a general fund or anything like that.
Or purchasing right-of-way, for example, on El Cedro for the 303 would not qualify either.
Okay, thank you.
Bill?
Sorry. Terry, what you ask us to approve every year is the 5-year plan or the current year? Is question 1.
You are adopting a fully 5-year plan. As part of the budget, you are only legally adopting expenditure and budget appropriation for the $4 million for the first year. So you're adopting the plan as whole, as funded, but we're only doing budget appropriation for the first year of the plan.
Okay. Second question, and I'm not sure, I don't know that we need an answer tonight, at least I know I don't. But we're looking at $4.5 million in wastewater in 2016, another $5 million in 2017. After having spent nothing the 2 fiscal years before it and $230 this fiscal year. Same thing on the water side, and I know we've got rate issues, that kind of thing. Can just get a little bit of background.
Yeah, the first thing I'll say is I'll go back to the carryover. We will have water and wastewater projects that will carry forward from subsequent years and will fall into the 13 funding and may also fall into 14 year, just because the construction may straddle. We worked with, there was a large group that worked on this with water and wastewater. We took the projections from community development. We actually do what's called a development trends book, and we look at where the development is occurring, both commercial and residential, and then we do kind of a conversion of EDU and how much you would need for capacity in the plant, and then how much water consumption you would need for the population being served. And so with that, you're going to find in 2016 that's when the plant expansion is slated to begin. I think we have part of the design done already. David probably can speak a little better to the projects. But with the population projections and the growth, that is when we need to be under construction legally to get that plant up to capacity by the time the service wouldn't be needed. The service levels would be there. Same thing with the water. The majority of funding in 16 is for Adam Interconnect, and that's when we would need to start servicing the population and put those wells in service.
David, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, I can expand a little bit on the wastewater treatment plant expansion. We're currently a little over 80% of capacity utilized, and we have design monies in this year's budget for completing. We have currently the design at 95%, and we've got monies in this year's budget which will be carried over to next year to complete the design. That's a requirement that we start the design once we reach 80. The next trigger is when we reach 90% of capacity, which is projected to be in fiscal year 15-16, that we'd be underway with construction. So the $4.5 million and the $5 million are for construction.
Joe?
2 questions. First, on the 303 right-of-way, is fiscal year 13 the last year for that payment?
Yes, it is. You'll notice it also drops slightly below the $2 million that we've been doing each year for the last several. But the $1.755 million is the final payment.
It's final payment, okay.
Yes.
Second question on the wastewater at the 90%. Are we looking at any partnerships or other opportunities that may come in place as opposed to expanding the plant?
I'm not aware of any ongoing or discussion, say, with Liberty or any other company, if that's what you mean in terms of
Wastewater?
partnering.
What about Talos?
Wastewater and water. And again, I don't know what the feasibility is, but I'm hoping that we're at least looking at the potential of partnering with either Tullison or Liberty.
City Manager, would you review that on Tallison for me, please?
Yes, we will absolutely look at all opportunities, if it makes sense financially, and doing partnerships to leverage the resources that we have amongst different municipalities. Anytime those come to our attention, we'll take a very serious look at that. There are some opportunities now. I know Tallison is looking at some partnerships. Again, we have to look at those very carefully, look at what the cost is, the operational impacts, et cetera, the control that we need to also be able to maintain. So those are all things that are going into this process. But for now, the CIP strictly looks at what we can control. So that's why you see those elements of expanding the plant in the later years.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure that we're looking at all, potential possibilities from a cost-effective type of manner. And again, it's not my expertise, so I expect staff to take care of that. So thank you.
Yes, and that would also include water projects, water resource, so anything really with utilities. And it goes beyond the utilities. Really, in a lot of the things we look at, where else can we partner? And we'll continue to look at all those opportunities.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, and just moving ahead, as you can see, the the water and wastewater portion of the plan does pick up in the outer years, and it's pretty heavily streets in the first 3 years. Once again, this is just the the next fiscal year. The total plan is $4 million. Moving ahead to the funding sources, just want to point out a couple things here. We've kind of narrowed this plan down. Again, it is $4 million for next year. Of that, the general fund portion really just pays for the payment for the 303 right away, and there are a couple street improvements and transportation master plan, and then the development fees. As you can see, they're about $1.6 million, and so this plan is really quite a bit scaled down in size than it has been in the past years. I want to remind you that, as we just talked about in the previous slide, we will be carrying forward nearly about $20 million in projects, though.
Bill?
Can you go back a slide? I need a little memory jogger. The 250 for parks, is that the master plan for
Correct.
Loma Linda? So we don't show.
Citywide master plan. They'll come in and do a
This
master
is the
plan
entire
for the
parks
city.
master plan.
Correct.
Okay. Loma Linda is under design right. I keep looking at Mike. Sorry. Is under some design right now.
That's correct. Loma Linda, the city is paying for the design. The master plan, which has already been completed, which council accepted, that was paid for by the Catholic Church. We are paying for the design, and that'll be completed in probably October of this year. And after that, we do not have any funding allocated for actual improvements at this point, but we'll be looking at opportunities from grants to partnerships to ability for the city to fund that as well.
Okay, so this 250 is strictly for the overall the parks master plan.
Citywide master plan.
There we go.
That's
Okay.
correct, for parks.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Molly?
When do you anticipate the citywide master plan kicking off?
I would have to punt that to Mike Svets
Mike,
of
would you come up to the
Parks Director.
microphone, please?
Thank you. Councilmember Campbell, we look to kick that off shortly after the first of the fiscal year. We expect that if the master plan is approved as part of the capital improvement plan, we'll have a scope ready to go to hit the street in July.
Okay, then to our city manager, I would like to just reiterate my support for us looking into establishing a advisory committee made up of our citizens so that we can get citizen input as to what we want our parks to look like in the future. If we're not going to have any funding for our parks for the next 5 years after this master plan is done, so I think it's really important that we listen to our citizens and we let them tell us what they want in the plan, and what better opportunity than to establish a advisory commission that will do that and work with the citizens with these public hearings and then come back and let council know.
I think it's just, if it was
So-
similar to the way we did up at Foothills, up in that area up in Australia, we went public on.
We
had
went public,
input,
but-
and we had work sessions, as I
Well,
remember.
we did, but I'll tell you, I was part of the public, and there was no really public input, because when we came up there, the plans were drawn, and a large number of us asked for specific things to be included in the plan, and at that time, the Parks Department thought about it and came back to the next meeting to tell us it wasn't feasible, but we wanted an amphitheater up there. We thought that would be a perfect place for the community to have events, and unfortunately, either they didn't have the money or they didn't have the space. So I'm just saying, if we had an established advisory committee that took an active part or helped do the public meetings before the plan was even drawn, we would have more input than to present a drawn plan to the public and then say, what do you think about it? Because by then it's too late.
And if I could comment on that, absolutely, we need the public input. I'm going to ask Mike to just talk about just a philosophy real quickly as far as how we include the public in our master planning. It happened that way at Loma Linda Park with that expansion where it opened up to the neighborhoods, and they had a lot of participation that really brought that across the finish line. That was evidenced by that group being out here as well when it came before council, expressing support for that. So we will have public input throughout the process. Mike, do you want to hit a little bit
For
more
my
detail?
speech, is this in the other question line that you have, or not?
Yes, it is.
All right, would you go ahead and do your question?
I'm pretty sure I know the answer, but just for clarification, that this will also include the trails and open space part of the plan also, because it's been years since we've done that. Weren't we doing this in conjunction?
Correct. Kind of to tie the transportation plan with the Parks Master Plan, they're going to be on parallel paths, and they will feed into the overall city's update of the general plan. And so as we work through the scope with engineering, we will be sure to intertwine open space and trails into possibly both, because we don't want them to get lost in either one, in particular the trails. So absolutely, open space and trails will be called out as part of a final Parks Master Plan that will feed into the general plan.
Well, I think, that's really going to work out nicely, I think, having the connectivity of trails, doing the street study at the same circulation as street study, all of that, and flowing into the general plan. I think that's all going to go nicely. I sure hope so. And one last thing, I know you're going to speak of philosophy, but make sure that you use the Youth Commission on that Parks Plan. Thank you.
Absolutely. As Mr. Dahlke had mentioned, these are the citizens' parks, and they're future parks. And part of the overall master plan will include a needs assessment. We need to know what we have and also what the community desires. Part of where we will go with a Parks Master Plan is simply to say that we're going to be somewhat limited based on the change in the impact fees and how they can be utilized, but that doesn't preclude us from dreaming big as part of a master plan within what we can within the criteria set forth by the impact fees. So it will include it'll include a needs assessment. It'll include focus groups. It'll include open, large public meetings. We will get to neighborhoods. We will get to HOAs. We will get to neighborhood alliances. And over a layer, though, including a Parks and Rec Advisory Board that serves in a very similar capacity as an Art and Culture Commission. They are there part and parcel for checks and balances, but at the same time, they're there to be advocates for people that can't necessarily participate in those meetings. So having that as part of a Parks and Recreation Department going forward, it lends further support to Parks and Recreation being an important quality of life factor.
What I'd like to see is, though, because of the experience when we were doing the city center and when we were going up to Australia to do the park, there were citizens of that area that didn't want a lot of the things that we have, or we were going to furnish in that park. So I would hope that we would have a cross-section of each community, somebody representing each community that can be there with their community message. And I think it will save a great deal of time for us and extra work if we have that.
Agreed. I would have to say that a cross-section of the community, not just in terms of where they live, but also from a demographic perspective.
Absolutely.
You want folks that represent families as well as folks that don't have kids, as well as seniors. So
Sure.
we will do that. And out of that, you typically end up with special interests, and that's fine. I mean, I think if they represent a special interest along the lines of Parks and Recreation that we can look to incorporate into our system, then we're doing our job.
Joanne?
Oh, I was just going to mention, be sure and have the recreational roundtable as a sounding board also. I think that would be another good group to look at it. And, I think you're heading in the right track. Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
I'll just follow up. I have a question. When you do the master plan, will it also include, because I noticed there's no money really set aside for the next several years, is it going to include a phasing when you talk to the community groups and everything? What areas, and will part of it be a phasing of where to go next?
Yes, I think absolutely. I think what we will do is we own very little land right now that we have the ability to develop, parks on. Yes, absolutely, positively. We will start by making sure that where we own land, and Phase 2 of Foothills is a very good example. It's a project that's been designed up to about 95% construction documents, but because of how impact fees can be used, quite honestly, that Phase 2 and Phase 3 need to go back to the drawing board. So that would be an example of prioritizing. We already have plans, but we're going to have to redo them. We'll look to do that first, and then identify where we own property that can be developed.
Now, the
that
central
match up.
part of the city is
Yes.
always, I'm going to bring that up because
Yes.
that's the city center and that's where the 100 acres were. And so we've, in a sense, we've sort of shortchanged that part of the city. I don't know how we can work through that because the plans and the cost and the infrastructure and how we're going to carve out that park, and it's changed, a couple times already. So it would be nice if we could at least look into that, and I know that's a pretty monumental project, so I'm not sure where that fits in there. Do we have any
But-
comment from the city manager?
Oh, I'm sorry.
The comment I would have, yes, it started off, we have 140 acres at City Center, 40 of which would have city buildings, and we were looking at having private development from Langford and Associates, which is the City Center development partner. Adjacent to that, the 100 acres, that started off as a 100-acre park, and then at one point we had 60 acres set aside for higher education, and now it's probably someplace in between. So we do have to, we'll be coming back to council talking about higher education. Where does that fit? Does it still have a place at that 100 acres? So we'll be looking at those strategies concurrent with what we're looking at for this master plan. So we have some decisions ahead of us. It's going to be, I'm going to say it has to be flexible because even the best plans may change as it relates to higher education. So whatever we have at that 100 acres has to be flexible, and we'll make sure that gets built into it to the extent possible.
And I appreciate you bringing that up, Mayor, because this is something that keeps getting put off, and it's that community that is the ones that are always at the end. And I remember when, Mike, you brought us, I don't know, 2 years ago or something, a study that was done on our parks and the areas of our city that had, the youngest children and had the largest need for park. And it was Central Goodyear. And that's, unfortunately also this place that we have this continual change. And so thanks for bringing that up because we don't want it to go off our radar. And it's something that we're eventually going to just have to say, you know what? It needs to be done.
Is there any way to carve out a place that's adjacent to the fence line of Wildflower, where the high school is, and the back part of that? Because there would be access, there's an access back there, Is there any way to designate ahead of time and just, that area back there for a park that would suffice? And I just throw that out. So I'm just saying, if you could look into that, I don't know what the feasibility and the cost, and, so I'm just throwing it out to you, that I think I'd like to see that looked at. Does everybody agree with that one?
Okay,
Great,
yes.
thank you. Any other questions for Mike while he's up here? Is he going to continue? Okay,
I'm going to wait for him to sit down.
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Terry, go ahead.
And just again to bring your attention to the funding, in years gone by, normally you would probably see 6, 8 funding sources up here. Reminding you that with the change in impact fees, it's really put minimum amount of money we can spend on this program. The other thing is, I want to remind you about the property tax and kind of how that relates to this. Normally, if we have increasing property values and we have revenue coming in from that, you can go out and bond for projects, and so you can do the nice streets and the parks and stuff. And our availability and capacity for that is somewhat limited. We probably will not have bonding for the next 5 years. So just kind of to keep that all in mind, we present the CIP one night. We're going to come back in the next week and we're going to present the expenditures. And with that, kind of just begin to put the whole picture together here of needs of the community and how you could potentially fund these things.
Yes, Joe.
Just, I guess, for confirmation on that general funding for the capital improvements, that's either
yes.
construction sales tax or one-time money in there?
It is one-time construction sales tax.
Okay.
These are some key projects. Again, David will conclude the presentation and give you an update on this. I'm just going to go into just touch on some of the key projects for 13. I think we talked about the impact fee study and why, again, that was brought about. It's mandated to be done in 14. A number of things kind of spun off from that. You'll see a transportation master plan, the parks master plan. Next week, there is a request to update the general plan. All of that's kind of woven in together to be done in fiscal year 13. The final payment of the right-of-way. And this is the enterprise resource planning, would be looking at the accounting and the structure system for the computer. Not allowed to say HTE replacement in case they want to be a competitor there, but this is the planning business analysis phase of this. There is funding in the additional out years. I believe it's in 14, maybe all of it's in 14 the next year after that. There is some fiber installation going on at a number, I think 3 different places, and then some the design of some street improvements for Cerebelle, and then again the construction of that is in the subsequent years.
Bill?
Terry, this is probably for David. The Cerebelle Street improvement design hit the FY13. I don't recall that being the #1 project in our discussion about the tip. Is this, and I'm going to use the Indian School 303 for 15-16 is pushed back. Is it because one's $2 million and one's $250,000? Is it that simple?
I think it was primarily because of the opening of the Half Diamond Interchange at Cerebelle. We think that'll put quite a bit more load onto Cerebelle. So they were very close in terms of priorities, Indian School and then the Cerebelle improvements in and around Van Buren. And that was the reason we showed the Cerebelle and Van Buren improvements with this coming fiscal year.
Yes, I was going to ask you to talk about that, City Manager.
Well, and David will go into a little more detail, but the reason for Cerebelle is because Cotton Lane Interchange will be closing, and that is used substantially by not only residents in the area in Canyon Trails, Estrella, but that will start pushing traffic on I-10 either on Cerebelle or Estrella or Bullard. So it is viewed that that is going to be a pinch point and has emerged as a priority to connect to that interchange, because right now Cerebelle is 2-lane roadway in several areas.
Is that, did you finish?
Yeah, that answered that aspect of my question. I guess to go back, I'm not sure that I know if we, as a council, provided direction on the Indian School 303, other than that little bit of conversation we had surrounding that. I guess I would look to Mr. Dalkey and say, do you feel like you have a pretty good handle on council's direction regarding that specific chunk of roadway?
On Cerebelle?
No, on the Indian School 303,
School.
that becomes our
I think
gateway.
Councilman Campbell brought that up at
Yeah,
the
she
last
did.
meeting. And I thought we looked around the table nodding of heads on that.
I just want to make sure it was clear because it's not completely, I'm in support of it. I can't say with a great deal of confidence that I was clear and I was part of the nodding of the head.
I thought
Okay.
we were, but then when it came back the next time, because of the fiber optic issue and different things like that, looking at the other roadways, that we realized there were other priorities.
I guess
once it
Cerebelle was because we have commercial, and the closing of those streets is going to hurt that quite a large commercial shopping center up there, and I think that was a concern. Brian, why don't you just address this for us?
Yes, just to finish up on Cerebelle, that is another part. You have the Canyon Trails Town Center that certainly is dependent upon the ability for traffic to get there. So with the Cotton Lane interchange, that will be closed for upwards of 645 days as they build that tall stack there, the 303 stack. We will be coming back to council with more information about that. We're not prepared tonight because what's happening is ADOT is looking at the schedule. We should have that even later this week. And then we'll also be talking about outreaches. What is our role as a city to talk about the impact of that closure at Cotton Lane and I-10. So that'll be coming later. In answer to the question on Indian School, we have David go through some of the elements of where we're looking at putting the dollars because they are limited. But there was discussion in Indian School trying to connect to the 303. There was also discussion as far as doing a traffic signalization at Indian School and Cotton Lane. You'll see these that are reflected in there, but certainly this is an opportunity for council to ask the questions to redirect if there is an interest in putting those dollars elsewhere. What I would recommend is for David, I think you have, you kind of laid out where the streets are going to be improved, kind of the order of those. And
I
that may
think
be
that one
helpful
had
to
a
see
lane.
those.
Did that one have a lane, Indian School, an additional lane going from?
Indian School currently is 2 lanes, and they're proposed to widen it to 2 lanes in each direction for a total of 4 lanes for about not quite a half a mile stretch in there.
Okay.
We actually, if I could just get through one more slide, probably not. We have a map and probably would
Wait.
help this discussion on the streets.
Wait. I did have one question on that. Your back one. I'm sorry. And you know what? I hate to tell you, Mike, but you might have to come back up. The last year, when we were going through budget discussions and we were trying to decide, did we want to spend money on infrastructure for Bullard and a study, or did we want to spend money on Loma Linda Park? We had, a listing of things that we were kind of a menu of things we were looking at. One of them also was the right-of-ways and the median enhancements, and I see that the landscaping has been put out until 16-17, which I understand, but I could have sworn, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I could have sworn that when we were looking at that part of median landscaping, and part of that had to do with like Van Buren, there's no landscaping that was never in the projects in the past, and so a lot of it was new build landscaping. But if I recall, it was back to putting in plants back into where they had been previously taken out, dead, whatever. I could have sworn there was a price tag of like $40,000 on that. And to me, that could be something, if that was the case, that we could bring closer to the present than putting it off, 2 to 3 years, just the plant life back into the picture. If that was the correct amount, I could be totally off. Michael.
And the other thing, when you address that, it seems to me that some of the developments that put some of those plants in that died. We questioned that, whether or not they had some responsibility to replace in certain areas. Does that sound familiar?
I'll try to answer both
Okay,
questions
thank you.
as we go. You are correct. Last year, what we did is we actually brought to you a 6-year plan that included plant replacement as well as decomposed granite replacement. The majority of the cost is on the decomposed granite side of things, but you are correct. That first year impact was about $40,000 on trees and plants in terms of replanting things that had, either reached the end of their life cycle or, had died prematurely.
And is that, so if that is something that, as the council thought, you know what, let's do the 40,000, is that something that is a CIP type of amount, or is that somewhere
And
else?
did we, and I don't even know, I don't remember agreeing to it, so that's why I'm asking,
I don't know.
Last
I
year,
would bring it back up if it's that amount.
I do not remember that, so.
the discussion was not as part of the CIP last year. The discussion was as part of, if I'm not mistaken, it was a part of using one-time funding. And so I think Loma Linda was up there as a potential one-time fund, and you did do that as far as the design goes. But some of the others, including the plant replacement and decomposed granite, were
delayed.
pushed off to a later date.
So I guess my question to council is how do you guys feel about bringing back up some plant replacement for 40,000?
Not this year, I'm not for it, so I don't know how anybody else feels.
I mean, when we're looking at some of these other, Wally asked the question. We have 60,000, 50,000 for the next few years of art. I mean, is beautification of our landscaping part of that? I don't know. I'm bringing that back up because I hate for it to be stuck in the whole 440,000 picture, because that is a big number. But when it's talking about that,
Joe?
As I recall, and I don't know where that discussion fits as we move forward there, Mr. Manager, but wasn't there a $250,000 line item that was a separate contingency that we could use for one-time funding?
the council stuff?
Yeah, for the council.
For the council.
And I guess my question is, I don't
Used
think
none.
any of that, unless I'm wrong, has been used to date. I know we were looking at some of it for the, what was it, the speed? Yeah, we were
humps.
going to use some of that for the speed mitigation stuff. But I don't think we've spent any of that yet, have we?
We have allocated up to $50,000 for the speed humps. We do not think it will cost quite that much, but that is coming out of the council contingency. We are also looking at carrying over the remainder. It's close to $200,000 for next year. So that's what we have in the budget that we'll be bringing back for council, kind of a sneak preview. But there is a remainder of $200,000 in that fund, at least.
So we still have
planned.
time to add different things.
So that could be something that was part of. Thank you.
And I would like to know exactly how many plants we're going to get for that amount of money to invest in the city at this time.
We do have that dialed in.
And the granite and the whole thing, whatever it's going to take, I want to see the number.
I think that's just plants.
Yeah, I want to know how many plants that is. And so that must be, there'll be additional cost to putting those plants in and doing the stonework or whatever it is. So I would like to have the full picture of that.
Madam Mayor, what we'll do is Mike has a lot of the estimates that were done previously. We'll put that in yellow paper staff report, get that back to council so you can have that in advance. Consider that as you go through deliberations on the next phase of the budget.
All right, great.
May I ask a question?
Yes,
Could
Wally?
some of the art monies be identified for plants for beautification purposes? Because we're beautifying our city. I mean, we're only talking 40,000.
The question
Yes,
on that is
City
what is a funding source for that? We have our CIP manager here, so just they're consulting now to see if those dollars can be moved. Certainly, we can try and answer that tonight if
You don't
possible.
have to tell me tonight. That's okay.
It's general fund.
No.
It's all
I
general
think-
fund? So yes, it can be moved wherever the council pleases.
Okay.
We've confirmed it's general fund.
I forgot about the 250,000, and so I think I would just leave the art alone and 200,000. But I just wanted to have the discussion because we don't seem to have sometimes.
That's what we're here for.
Exactly. So, thank you.
Mayor, to answer your question regarding the plant replacement, I think the city's landscape design guidelines back in the mid-2000s, I think we overplanted.
We did, and we had
and-
complaints. If you remember, citizens came before us, and we had a number of emails about that they felt that we could change our landscaping plan, that it was the speed in which a plant grows, or a tree, or a bush. And so we did. We had a number of citizens complain about
And so
overplanting.
Yeah, to answer your question, where we have had areas in commercial property that have died out, it's because we planted mature plants, and as they've filled out to go in and have the ones that died out replaced, we'd be just doing that cycle over and over again. So it makes sense for us to, if we're going to plant that way, we have to understand that there's a certain amount of loss that will be incurred, but there's not going to be an expectation that we would replace that loss.
Can I ask a blank
Yes,
question?
Sherry.
When these plants die out, y'all go in and shut off the sprinkler, the drip system to those plants. So we're actually, as they die out, we're not watering
Dirt.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Joanne?
Occasionally. I've caught them. But, back to actually as policy, it seems to me that the policy had never been there that if a plant died, there was no money to go back and put a new plant in. And so, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's what I'd always been told. And so I'm sitting here thinking of 10 years of plants that are probably gone, and maybe we had overplanted. Maybe that is true. But if you have identified that there are areas that truly need to have the plants back, then, I hate to keep talking about this. We can move on.
That is a part, and we'll include that in the yellow paper.
But that's been policy.
All right, go ahead.
Okay, are there any other questions on key projects? Like I said, aside of streets, David has a map, and we have an overhead to probably facilitate that discussion. Just want to show you here the operating impacts. As you can see, very minimal. Most of the costs in the out years are for plant expansion at the wastewater treatment plant. Steps to come in the budget process. As I've been saying, we're going to be back in front of you the next 3 weeks, probably the next month. We'll review general fund expenditures. Next week, the following week, will be enterprise fund discussion that will include water, wastewater, sanitation. We'll touch on HERF and also the ball stadium. We have left a session open for policy discussion, tentatively scheduled on May 5th. If we can present a draft budget, get that all balanced out, and then moving ahead to the tentative and the final budget adoption late June. With that, if we don't have any questions, I'll turn it over to
Joe.
David.
Just a couple quick ones. Under the policy discussion, will we be talking property tax, rate, levy? Does that come under that discussion on policy?
Yes.
It does? Okay. Second question, I think, is helpful for the general public when we do our presentation. When we look at our overall debt service, you have one big number, but there's a lot of different funding sources, whether it's West Core, whether it's property tax, whether it's enterprise funds or whatever. I think it would be nice for the general public, and you may already include that in there, but I don't know, but to show how that all breaks down from a funding source, because it's not all general fund, it's not all property tax, it's not all enterprise fund. So I think it would be very helpful, especially with some discussions we hear from some of our sister cities on some of their issues, how we have the revenue sources aligned up with those different debt services and how it matches up, which I think is kind of critical. So it'd be helpful, I think, more for the public for that. Thanks.
Any other questions? I think that concludes this session. Before I, no, we still have one more? Oh, David, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I was going to, Terry's passing out some maps that show the projects that we reviewed in work session last month, and this version also shows the tentative years that they would fall in the 5-year plan. And I can briefly go over that. And and then answer any questions. I wanted to give you an update on a couple of those in terms of what, how we're going to handle some issues that have been brought to our attention.
Why don't you just go ahead and do
Go
the
ahead.
overview?
Next year, 12-13, Terry's mentioned the fiber, the key projects, including fiber projects. There's also, we want to get started with the design of Cerebelle and Van Buren intersection improvements and Cerebelle improvements leading up to the freeway, as well as kick off the transportation master plan in conjunction with the general plan and then the parks master plan. It was mentioned, Councilmember Cip mentioned, the importance of Project A1, which is Indian School, and based on revenue, the revenue stream, it doesn't show falling until year 15-16. However, I'm just noticing that in year 14-15, we show improvements at the Yuma and Bullard intersection. I'm sorry, yeah, Yuma and Bullard intersection, which would be intersection improvements and traffic signal improvements in year 14-15. So I think this could be revisited, say, at this time next year, but I think one way to advance the Indian School projects would be to basically trade places with Indian School and then push back the Bullard-Yuma improvements potentially. And I guess the other thing I would mention, there has been some slight increase in development in general, and it's possible. The reason we're putting in a lot of these improvements is because development hasn't occurred in those areas, and we need to put the additional lanes. And it's possible that development could come along in certain areas. I mean, it would be nice where they would move their development, move forward, say, some of the improvements to an earlier year, just because they're developing their frontage.
I have one question at Yuma and Bullard. Since we're putting a big push now to develop around the airport, what is that going to do to that? It's a question. I'm looking at city manager.
Probably the best way of answering that, one is it is a high priority because it is going to be one of the most incredibly important employment centers for this city. Some of the things we're looking at is engaging our private landowners there. We're looking at working with Urban Land Institute for some concepts as far as what we can do to really establish what we're trying to accomplish there. So that will be coming forward as part of the budget process as well, very nominal amount. But we want to really get a good design concepts of what we're trying to attract there, how we can work with the local landowners, which ones are the most hungry to try and do vertical development, working with economic development. So there are many aspects of trying to get Bullard Avenue done. One of which is to do the the intersection improvements, and we just have to see how that, the timing on that is. Is that the right year to put those in? Right now, it's a placeholder, but it is a priority because we fully expect for things to also happen at the airport. And as you get into the airport and open up that west entrance into the airport off of Bullard Avenue, that may change some of the timing as well of some of these key infrastructure components, including streets and signalized intersections. Long answer, but right now it's a placeholder, and right now our first step for next year is to work with experts from the local chapter, the ULI. So that's one that we want to bring forward and work with our landowners on.
I just wanted you all to put that on the radar here, and thank you for updating them on that. Yes, Joe?
Just a general question, is improvement district any type of a possibility to financing some of those improvements on Bullard?
Absolutely it is. That is a contingent liability upon the city. But the good news is you assess the private landowners in that area for infrastructure improvements, much like we did on McDowell Road corridor, where those improvement districts are actually assessed to West Corps and two other landowners that are in that area, including Evergreen. That is absolutely an opportunity for us to do that. And they pay the assessment twice per year based on what the bonds sold are. But the city has to be the catalyst in doing improvement districts by state law.
But don't they have to vote as well that their property gets assessed, as that's part of it as
Majority, yes.
majority?
The majority, but what we did on McDowell Road, we had 9 landowners, and some of them did not want to participate, so they decided to improve on their own. So we made sure that every landowner got what they wanted out of that. It was an incredible partnership with all working together, but only 3 landowners at the end of the day ended up wanting to tax themselves.
I have a
Wally.
question. Actually, I have an observation I need to make to David. On your map you're showing us, you are not showing any of the new homes that are going in to the west of Cerebelle, south of Indian School, and they are building like crazy in that area. That happens to be the north end of Pebble Creek. It's one of the new units where they're putting in the additional 9-hole golf course. You show no streets, however, I assure you there are homes there, they're occupied, and that was part of my concern when I brought up the Indian School widening, is because as those homes are built and people are moving in, they're using that Cerebelle gate to go to 303. And I would guess that there's going to be several hundred homes finished within the next 12 to 36 months. There could be even more than that, but you do need to start showing the streets. They're there, and people are actually living in there.
Can we get
So-
along with that, then the housing permits that are pulled, and can we get a more accurate of what's happening in there?
Yes, I'll add the streets and the
Thank
homes
you
in that
very
area.
much.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Mayor,
Yes, Bill.
Dave, one last question. Just, we're talking about a traffic light at Cotton Lane and Indian School, and I understand Dix and Sub-Zero are out there. And I know we will not install a traffic light without a traffic study. It just seems that if we're placeholdering that fairly early, that there's just not enough. Once the 303 becomes the super highway, Cotton Lane isn't really going to have that much traffic, or am I missing something there?
Cotton Lane, I think, will have traffic from Indian School north, but probably, well, no, actually, it'll be connected to McDowell Road, so we'll start to see more traffic on Cotton Lane. Was that your question?
Yeah, I think I'm having a difficult time visualizing the after effect of 303 becoming a highway through that area, and I would, I guess, just throw out my own caution and concern that we're not tying A1 and A2 together as a project, that they're clearly standing separate.
They are separate projects, definitely.
Then I'm good.
Yes, Sherry.
Okay, I have some freeway questions just in general. When is that portion of the 303 from the freeway to where A1 or A2 would be, when is that portion going to be, I guess, freeway standards, up to freeway standards? When will that be done? What year?
According to ADOT's schedule, it would be completed in June or July of 2014.
Okay, so that isn't going to be till 14, and you're recommending us do that then just the next year, right? 15, 16.
That is correct.
Okay. And then when is the Cerebelle on and off ramp going to be done?
That will be done this year, probably late summer, well, July, August
Oh, really?
this year. Yes.
So they're not going to close off Cotton Lane until they turn on Cerebelle, correct?
They will open Cerebelle and Citrus, and then before they would close down Cotton Lane.
Okay, and then I like the phasing for the Bullard. I personally wouldn't want to touch that because I do see the airport as an economic engine. I would like to see that. But I'm just concerned that we coordinate our projects with the freeway. And when we do this, when we open up Cerebelle Lane, we close Cotton Lane, are we going to watch, or does ADOT watch the traffic back up? Because at 5 o'clock, last time they did I-10, that was backing up. You know, when they closed Estrella, you get almost hit every day. I would get off the freeway. I wouldn't take the freeway because it was so dangerous. Are we going to monitor that with ADOT? Because my concern is once they close Cotton Lane, you're going to have backups even at Cerebelle, because even if you improve Cerebelle, that's a lot of traffic going down there, both directions, that people are going to be without Cotton Lane taking off.
We both city and ADOT will monitor that. ADOT definitely doesn't want backup onto the main line. So.
And my last question, sorry, I have a lot of freeway questions. The north part of Cerebelle, I know there's a light there, but is that capable then? Is it improved and capable enough to handle that extra traffic if we're worried about the south part? Is the north part okay as well?
The signal at Cerebelle and McDowell can handle it.
Okay, so that's fine. That intersection is fine.
Yes, in fact, part of ADOT's project for the freeway will be to complete the improvements from I-10 up to McDowell Road on Cerebelle.
Okay.
So the focus for us would be to the south.
Okay.
Some good observations, Sherry. Any other? Are we?
I
Yes.
guess I just had one more thing I wanted
Yes.
to just update you all on Cerebelle between Van Buren and Yuma. With the citywide transportation master plan that we would start next year, one of the things we'll reevaluate, because it's been some years since we've done that, we'll reevaluate the truck routes and restrictions. For example, we'll look at Cerebelle adjacent to Wildflower. And then the other thing, recently we were asked to look at street lighting on Cerebelle, and there are some additional street lights on the east side of the street that we're going to try to incorporate with what we call the A5 project, which would be the additional lanes in the southbound direction to address a request that we have received from that community.
Questions? Before I cut anybody off, are we finished or are we, yes, City Manager?
I was just going to do a quick summary when we're all
Please
done
do.
with this topic.
Thank you.
So bear with me as we try and get through this. Really, the CIP that's in front of you now, no substantial changes. There were a lot of great questions, and appreciate the questions. It helps us. Will be several follow-up items as a result of that. Do not see the CIP in itself changing, but some of the things that came up is, and I'll go back to, I guess, the earlier work session item 2 on the Arts Commission. A couple of follow-ups is looking at doing a tour of Goodyear, certainly how we can do that with our website, social media, et cetera. We absolutely will take a look at that, and we'll let you know how we'll be able to accomplish that. The other is, it came up as being able to ID the artists, so make sure that the artists are identified with the work that they have. That's what I pulled out of that part of the work session. Did I miss anything? On the CIP, a couple of things came up. One is it's very important that we include the public as part of the master plans, all the master plans that we're doing, not just the parks, but certainly transportation as well. So we'll be bringing you back as we do those master plans, the outreach to the public, and that will be part of the presentation so you have a good understanding of how those are done. We'll have a yellow paper that will be done that was provided, or that will provide information on landscaping, what the costs are associated with that, granite replacement, those types of things.
And along with that, can we have they identified those areas? I mean, do we have sort of a map that would identify exactly what we're talking about?
I know we have some.
Something?
I don't see our parts.
He's nodding yes.
Yes, I know we have some, so I'm going to say yes. Thanks, Michael. And the other is certainly what we have as placeholders, and especially as it relates to some of the utilities, we'll continue to look for opportunities with IGAs, with different cities for trying to do joint projects where it makes sense. And the council is aware you have a council contingency, so if there are items that come up that has the direction of council to use those funds, you, as I stated, you'll have about $200,000 going into next year for any for areas where you want to spend those dollars. And I know, and we're adding to the map the streets around the out of Pebble Creek, the Cerebelle area, that will be coming up. And the last thing I had, Council Member Pizzillo, you had asked about a debt service schedule. Certainly can be part of presentations so we come back to council on the budget. And that's all I had.
Anything else? I just wanted to add, and I did ask staff today, just so you know, but I'm trying to think. It's the Estrella office building off of Roosevelt. It's where Paul Smiley's business is. Has anybody gone in that parking lot? It is an absolutely beautiful, beautiful a display of a bronze of an Indian, and I almost ran into a car looking at it. But is it got an animal attacking him or something? And something like it is magnificent. Who paid for this? If this is done by private partnership, why aren't we pursuing that with businesses that come in? And we should say to these businesses, hey, listen, part of this, we would like you to private partnership with us for an art display like it's in front of Walgreens and like it's, so I want everybody get in your car, drive over there. It's spectacular. There's no reason why these big businesses cannot put some kind of art display in front of there, some kind of statue, something. And so I really think we need to pursue that. Okay, and so we'll put the Art Commission to work on that, Economic Development to work on that, and you council people, call them on the telephone. Let's put them to work on it, make our city beautiful. All right, that's it. Okay, would you like to take a 5-minute break before we start the meeting? So I'm going to adjourn this meeting. More than 5 minutes? No. 6:45. All right, 6:45. Brady's adjourned.
Are we doing enough